What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the DFS Pick 6. I'm Eric Crain, joined by the two of the GOATs out there. We got Rich Hribar. Lord Reeves, what's up, man? How we doing?
What's going on, guys? I mean, that's October 2nd. It's hard to believe, we wait for all summer for all this to come, and we're already in week 5, and you just kind of wonder, what the hell happened in the first quarter of the season?
Dude, it's flying by. I don't know about for you, but it is 100% flying by for me. John Daigle, is it flying by for you as well?
It is flying by. However, even though it's week 5, it's seen what went on just a few minutes ago before this show. It's like an S show in the Crain house. Everything is just happening right now for you.
I mean, look, how was I supposed to know I was supposed to update programs?
You looked over, you said everything was closed over, and then you did it 5 seconds later. You said, oh, wait, everything's open. And
no, just my Chrome was open. Just
Chrome, okay.
Yeah, and I had like a bunch of stuff open there. So hopefully everything's going to be okay from now. And I know from a football standpoint, everything's going to be okay. And from a personal standpoint, everything is great right now. We record this on Wednesday night, and obviously I'm decked out in my Blues gear today. And I am currently watching the St. Louis Blues banner raising. And I know we're supposed to talk football, but look, man, this is the day I've been waiting for forever. So I'm just glad to be joined by you guys when it comes to this. Reeves, are you excited that hockey season's here?
I am just so thrilled to share this moment with you.
Did not even sound thrilled whatsoever.
I mean, I can probably name. I don't even know if I can name. I don't know how many Blues players I can name in history. Was Brett Hall Blue?
Yes, he's the president now.
And Maverick, or not Maverick, and Stars great as well.
There's one, and that's about it, man. That's about what I got. Not much. Cleveland never had a hockey team, man. I never grew up with hockey, so I was never really a part of my life.
All right.
So I just never caught the bug, man.
All right, Daigle, you have the bug, right?
I wouldn't say bug, but I watched the Stars as a bandwagoner. However, I know what you're feeling because I recall watching the Mavericks raise the banner.
Yeah.
So it's a good sensation. It's a great sensation.
Very cool. I wish I was there tonight, but I'm not. I'm here with you guys, which is, let's face it, I have no problem being here.
I love you.
Of course, hey, this is how it is, man. It's good times. We're on here. We
raise a banner every Wednesday.
You're damn right we do. So let's go ahead and start raising some banners. We're going to start off by talking about a couple teams that aren't going to be raising any banners. It's Tampa Bay at the Saints, 47.5-point total. The Saints 3-point favorites at home. And John, at this point, I don't know what the hell to do with Tampa Bay because sometimes Jameis Winston looks like the greatest ever, like last week. Sometimes you wonder if they're going to sign Ryan Fitzpatrick and bench Jameis Winston at halftime. I don't know what to do with this Tampa team. The Saints defense, better than people think, yet it's a high total. John, how are you looking at this Tampa Bay team?
The hardest thing about this Tampa offense this week is that usually we get excited about teams in the Superdome. It allows for up-tempo, as Rich once coined. It's the Coors Field of NFL. But with Teddy Bridgewater, nothing is being given. You earn every single yard because their pace is slowed down to a certain extent. It's more of a horizontal offense. His just average air yards is incredibly low. Everything runs through Alvin Kamara, which then slows down the other side. So we saw Chris Godwin as a game-time decision go nuts in a shootout against the Rams. But against this Saints offense, I'm genuinely not sure we can rely on both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Jameis Winston, for that matter, to deliver as much as last week. Maybe even 75% of the production is last week, just because it seems like it's going to be a much slower game.
Yeah, and when I look at this spot, I say Tampa's defense is better. The Saints' defense is better than people think. And I see this high total in Reeves. I can't find anybody that I'm in love with here.
Yeah, it's tricky, and John nailed it just because the switch. Did you guys ever wonder what it would be like if Sean Payton had Colt McCoy?
No,
that's what listen, that's what we've seen the last 3 weeks. Listen, I respect Teddy Bridgewater, man. He got his money this year. Now we know why he turned down that job with the Dolphins, because he was going to have to play and he would have been exposed. He would have found out that he was actually Colt McCoy. Because this offense has died. He's averaging 5.4 yards per his ADOT, his average up the target. They're literally, he's a bus driver out there. That's literally, he's out there to just not lose the games. We had a game where they won. We watched a Saints game where they won on nothing but field goals. what has happened to life in the fantasy world that we want to know. Even Kamara has had like one awesome game and then like two like kind of not good games. In Teddy's, I mean, he didn't start that Rams game, but he basically played every drive but two of them. Kamara didn't hit there. He didn't hit last week, and then it was awesome against the Seahawks. And then Michael Thomas has been fine. He's kind of like a deluxe, Jarvis Landry, in this offense.
Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, but he's still hitting. I mean, he's got 9 or more catches in 3 of the 4 games he's played this year. He's getting peppered with opportunities. The target share is extremely high. What's happened though is just like all the ancillary pieces have just died. Where Breeze would have us in play, or because they're scoring points, we'd say, "Oh, they're at home. We can, we like to play Ted Ginn when they're at home." Or maybe Jared Cook's got a good matchup, which he does. But we can't expect Teddy to exploit this matchup. You look at so Thomas has 238 receiving yards over the past 3 weeks. Kamara has 127. The next highest guy is Jared Cook. He has 53.
It's not good.
What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do with that? And then, like I said, and Kamara and Thomas aren't even guys that have been like high ceiling plays. Kamara was the RB1 the week against Seahawks, but Thomas has just been a guy that's gotten us there with a steady floor. So yeah, I mean, the Saints side is just really, we can't count on them doing their part. And if they're not going to do their part, we can't count on the Bucs to just carry them. And you kind of touched upon the defense. And I feel like the Saints have done this the last few years. For like the first month, they just come out and don't really play good defense. They did it last year. Remember they played in that bonanza with the Bucs week 1 against Ryan Fitzpatrick. And then they've kind of figured it out as the season goes on. And they defend the run well, and the pass defense starts to shore itself up. And that kind of is what we saw a little bit last Sunday night, even though the Cowboys completely gave them an out by just playing, 2016 Jason Garrett style football, in that Sunday night game. But yeah, you kind of hit on it. It's one of these things. Without Drew Brees involved in this game, we lose kind of that home field in the Superdome luster that we would always chase.
Yeah, one guy that's been picking it up for Tampa that actually looked good yet last week was Ronald Jones. He's cheap enough. I don't particularly like the matchup, but Daigle, do you expect Ronald Jones to kind of take over this job in Tampa Bay?
I wish, and I never thought I'd say I wish about Ronald Jones starting. But the fact is 59% of Tampa's backfield touches the past 2 weeks has just outperformed on every level Peyton Barber along the way. But Bruce Arians came out midweek and said he's happy with the situation, that Peyton Barber will continue to start. However, it's kind of like, as we discussed before the show, NBA DFS, where it's like Peyton Barber starting, he's committing a foul and coming out after 1 minute. The thing is, though, is that not only do we need Ronald Jones to actually be on the field and start, because it will ultimately help him down the road, but we just need him to catch passes. I mean, it is inexcusable that he's gotten 3 targets this season. And those targets are what we need for him to be the actual golden ticket in this backfield. So for FanDuel, that's fine. But for DraftKings, it's almost a situation where you can just never play him.
Yeah, it's become really frustrating, because we've seen some of these offenses. Pittsburgh might end up being that way. There are a few other offenses where they're just like Kansas City, where you like all the pieces, but you can't really play any of them. Reeves, do you expect Jones to take over here, or are you just kind of using a stay off approach with this whole backfield?
From a DFS stance, it's hard, play any of these guys, anybody that's like just in like a pure timeshare that could kind of come and go as it pleases, as Bruce Arians pleases. And Barber still is a guy that has cropped up. He had the touchdown to start last week, and then Jones just kind of took over. The past 2 weeks, he's got 203 yards to just 74 for Peyton Barber. But Barber keeps starting, keeps getting just enough carries. What's interesting about the Bucs is I think one thing that they've had so far in their corner that none of us were really counting on is they've kind of had neutral positive game script every game so far. Even the game that they lost to the Giants, they were in control the whole game. Week 1, they were never really a negative game script until the very end against the 49ers. They've kind of really been able to just involve the running back still to a higher degree than I think we all anticipated they would be, coming into the season. We thought that they just had to be pass. It hasn't been to that type of situation yet. And it's not probably going to be here either. Like the Saints aren't going to run away from them. So we'll probably see the backfield continue to be used in like a higher volume than maybe they will be when they have to play catch up, with season moves on. But I mean, from a DFS stance, I mean, I'm going to leave it alone. I'll play Ronald Jones maybe in my flex spot and chase it. But DFS, it's just too much volatility there.
I genuinely think the only one that's safe, and it's not on Tampa's side, on So the Saints side, despite Teddy Bridgewater being under center, is Michael Thomas still in cash if you want to go that route? He's become such a safe floor play. For the fourth week in a row now, specifically on DraftKings, is where I'm looking at because his targets and his catches are important since he has no ceiling really right now. His salary has dropped for the fourth consecutive week. It's now just sitting there at 6,600, which implies that he scored at least 14 points to reach value, and he's crushed that in every single game this year by at least 2 points. So he, with Teddy Bridgewater the past 2 weeks, has the sixth highest target share at his position. So I do think it's a floor play, not foreplay, and acceptable if you want to go that route with foreplay in cash games.
I'm definitely willing to go that route with foreplay in cash games. Reeves, real quick, Tampa Bay passing game, any interest in Evans or Godwin? We really haven't touched on them at all.
I mean, we know we're getting there. You got to pay for it. That's the thing. We're at this stage where you just have to, what you have to pay up. So, I mean, if you're not like full in, like this game could be a back and forth shootout. Like we're circling that in game stacks last week. It's a lot tougher this week, but I mean, those guys are kind of business as usual. Marshawn Lattimore kind of got back on the train a little bit last week. He still allowed the most yards in coverage. Played a little bit better against Amari. Him and Mike Evans have a little bit of good history together. Remember Evans got kicked out of that game a couple years ago and Lattimore was giving him the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came out last year and then opener put up 150 on Lattimore. They're kind of fun to watch when they play each other. But I mean, Godwin's got a stellar matchup in the slot against PJ Williams, and slot guys have been torching the Saints, and we've been targeting old PJ for a couple of years here. So I mean, I think that Godwin has the best objective matchup, which just I don't know if we're going to have that back and forth, volley game that we usually type to see with Breeze as under center.
All right, let's move on to the highest total game on the slate. The Falcons at the Texans, 49-point total. Houston, 5-point favorites at home. And this Falcons side, John, like I'm looking at it, and Julio Jones is obviously one of the premier plays in this slate. Houston corners, not good. The problem is, then you have to start trusting Matt Ryan. I'm not sure I'm ready to go there. What do you think about this Atlanta side, Daigle?
Yeah, Houston's defense, although they really don't have much talent, they've been sneakily good, especially at pressuring the quarterback. But now it's just a matter of attacking Matt Ryan, who has thrown for over 300 yards in every single game this season. Yes, their offense lacked excitement and energy against the Titans. It's still amazing they couldn't score despite the fact that it really did seem like they were moving the ball quite a bit. But also losing two starting offensive linemen mid-play will do that. But yeah, it's one, as you said, Julio Jones is an easy tournament play. I also think Calvin Ridley, there's more than enough reason to go back to him. He opened the season with 2 touchdowns, getting peppered with targets, and since then has been just uber quiet, doing absolutely nothing. But he will have a terrific matchup against these shoddy corners, all three across the board. It's just a matter of the Falcons keeping up with the Texans, and I believe they can, especially if we get Kenny Stills, and we'll talk about this in depth in a second. But I think there's actually something to DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller on the outside being better without Kenny Stills in the lineup, if that's what we get, which then lends itself to a shootout. But we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, this game to me, and I know it's supposed to be, I feel kind of cheap saying this because it's like, oh, of course it's the highest total on the slate. Of course it's going to shoot up. But Reeves, I don't know about you, but to me, this game feels like it could absolutely be a back and forth shootout between these two teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because the Falcons can't do anything besides pass. So, I mean, that always lends itself. And then you look at defensively, I mean, they're just not taking a step forward. They lose Keanu Neal. They made Marcus Mariota and A.J. Brown and Corey Davis look like the 94 Oilers with Warren Moon, Haywood Jeffries, Ernest Givens, Webster Slaughter. I mean, anytime you can make Corey Davis and A.J. Brown just look like, in that passing game, just look like they're just throwing like through practice, 7-on-7 drills. When you end the next week, you get Deshaun Watson, a definitely, hungry DeAndre Hopkins, the air yard, we're going to keep chasing Will Fuller till it happens. Like by now, everyone has planted their flag and we're riding this until it finally happens.
Yeah. I mean, we're just lighting it on fire, but man, what the hell ever.
We're just going to keep doing it. We're just going to keep going back. But yeah, this is the game. I mean, there's a reason it has the highest total. And then, and we're going to get Watson in a spot too, where, you look at Watson's 2 down games. They were kind of games you can kind of circle him to kind of struggle. I mean, we don't expect him to be the type of guy that would struggle to the degree he has in those matchups. Mm-hmm. But, Carolina has just shut down the pass in general this whole opening month of the season. And then his other game was, against the Jaguars, when Ramsey was playing well and shut down Hopkins that game. So, he had 2 down games. He's going to be going up against it. They just allowed over 20 points to Marcus Mariota. So, great bounce back spot for Watson. Big bounce back spot for Hopkins, who's had 3. He's been 3 years since he was a wide receiver 40 or lower, in 3 consecutive games. So, he's going to be ready to eat. And then, you talk on the other side, like Ridley's great run back. It's chasing that downside. If you look at last week, then they played against the Titans. The Titans just really took away the boundaries. So Julio and Ridley just got nothing. Game script kind of went askew. And all they did was just throw a tertiary dump off. So Sanu had 9 targets. Hooper had a bunch of targets. Devontae Freeman caught 8 passes. It was just that. They had to just dump down to all those guys. Now this week, they're going to be going against a Texans team that's just struggled on the boundaries. Jonathan Joseph is, it's definitely way past his prime. They've allowed 19 fantasy points per game, 31st in position to opposing wide receiver ones. It's a great get-right spot for Julio. Just everything. The passing games are just what we're really locked into because we don't really want to play any running backs here.
Yeah.
Great bounce-back spots here, and we expected these teams to throw on each other very well.
All right, so here's my question for you, Reeves, because I asked John this too, and I haven't asked you yet. Can we trust Matt Ryan?
Yeah, why not? Look at the floor he's giving you. It was just completely – he threw 370 yards and no touchdowns last week. Prior to that, he had thrown for multiple touchdowns, in 7 straight games going back to last year. It's very rare to throw for 370 yards and no touchdowns. It's pretty hard to do. So I would expect him to, he's thrown over 300 yards in every game. So, I expect the yardage to be there again. And if that type of yardage is there, you just play that type of yardage and you just don't worry about the touchdown variance. That's kind of what we are with Ridley. Like, everyone's frustrated with Ridley, but we're not going to bench a guy whose quarterback's throwing for 300 yards every week. Like, we're going to keep just saying, all right, we're going to get a piece of this sooner or later.
What I love the most about the Texans side, though, is that there's game theory, which we should always look at and play against humans as opposed to everything else, the numbers everyone can see. And humans will look down to Will Fuller and perhaps Kiki QT, who I do think is a good play.
Yeah.
But DeAndre Hopkins is the most expensive wide receiver on both sides, FanDuel and DraftKings.
Nobody's going to play him.
Given his last 3 games, no one's going to play him. It's going to be the lowest DeAndre Hopkins has been owned and perhaps will be owned all season, which tells me you just lock him in. I don't even care what he does. It's just game theory from the start to lock him right in.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time if you're stacking up this game. And you know what? It's Matt Ryan especially. He opens up a lot of doors as the 5.9K price tag. And one of the nice things, too, you don't have to worry about playing Devontae Freeman. We can just cross him off the list because I am over Devontae Freeman, and I haven't played him yet this year. But I just have no desire to play him. Another team that I have no desire to play is the Bengals, but unfortunately they're going up against our Cardinals this week. 47.5 point total. Cincy 3.5 point favorites at home. And Reeves, Joe Mixon eventually is going to have a big game, right? That's eventually going to happen, isn't it?
Maybe. I don't know. I love how you said our Cardinals. They're definitely your Cardinals at this point. I am out on the Cardinals. I have voiced my frustration with the horizontal raid. Over the past couple weeks, you look at Kyler Murray and this team, them not having any boundary presence at wide receiver has just nuked this offense. This offensive line just can't support anyone to go deep anyways. Kyler Murray's ADOT has gone from 5th, it's 10.7 yards to 8.1 yards. It's been 5.0 yards 2 weeks ago. It was ahead of only Teddy Bridgewater. It was 5.0 yards last week, ahead of only Mason Rudolph. So the horizontal raid is in full effect. They can't get the ball downfield. Murray's been fine because he started to use his legs, and he's been kind of a floor play. But he's like the QB4 on DK this week on pricing. Like, who the hell is paying that?
Nobody.
For a guy that's given you no ceilings thus far and probably isn't going to give you a ceiling as a road quarterback either, in this matchup. It's crazy because a lot of people are going to talk about this game and the pace of play and, how the Cardinals are – first and seconds for play, and the Bengals are 6th and seconds for play. But, dude, these offenses are teenage boys in the bedroom. They are in a hurry to not score. This is completely a fact. The Bengals are 28th in yards per drive, 29th in touchdowns per drive. The Cardinals are 26th in yards per drive and 28th in touchdowns per drive. These teams play fast for no damn reason because they're terrible. All they do is give the other team a bunch of plays to run on their terrible defenses. And that's all we've been able to do with these two teams. Since they can't do anything functional on their own, we've been targeting the opposition. Now they play each other. So what are we to do? And that's kind of where we are in this matchup. But I think the core pieces here in play are pretty obvious. And we'll talk about the Bengals side, but I don't want to eat up this whole clock here. But David Johnson, obviously, is in a smash spot. His salary still hasn't gone up. When you just look at the Bengals and who they've played, week 1, 24 points to Chris Carson. Week 2, they give up more than 14 PPR points to 3 different 49ers running backs. Week 3, they give up 17 PPR points to Shang Tsung, Frank Gore. And then last week, they give up over 20 PPR points, not only to James Conner, but also to Jalen Samuels. I mean, they're just getting badgered by backfields. David Johnson is going to be like the guy that we circle on the Arizona side. And then I've got some thoughts on the Bengals side, but I don't want to eat up too much here.
Well, you mentioned David Johnson, and of course, he's going to be the guy that we're really focused on. Christian Kirk expected to miss this game, which means that we're going to have some wide receiver value on the Arizona side. The problem is, Daigle, do you have a coin? Do you have like a four-sided die that we can throw around? Because outside of Larry Fitzgerald, I don't have faith in Keyshawn Johnson, Trent Sherfield, or even, dare I say, Andy Isabella this week. What do you think about this Arizona side?
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of question marks. Some have rumored that they'll go to more 11 personnel, leaving 3 wide receivers on the field the majority of the time, as opposed to 10 personnel, in which they just run 4 wide receivers. But whatever the case, you're just tossing coins at that point. I mean, it could be Keyshawn Johnson, but then again, it could be Pharoh Cooper, who apparently is going to play the.
I forgot Pharoh Cooper's a thing now too,
and apparently Pharoh Cooper's starting as well. Like, he's going to take Christian Kirk's slot role, which allowed Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald to continue leading this team in routes run. So now we have Pharoh Cooper in there. Andy Isabella is apparently the number 5. Even
they
though
hate him.
They do hate him. And I do think he's explosive, but I'm also not a primary college scout. I just know the people I talked to and what I watched, he looked great. But again, they're not using him in the slot where he was initially pigeonholed coming out of college. They're using him on the outside, apparently. So I don't know, to the point where, yes, you could probably dabble them in Millie Maker lineups, but like your single entry tournaments, you're not gonna waste an entry on them. No,
and Reeves, when I'm looking at these guys, like, I feel like in PPR, one of them's going to get there. I just don't know who the hell it's supposed to be. But I don't think I can even do Andy Isabella because they very clearly hate that dude.
Yeah, I mean, he ran 3 routes last week, and
that's not a lot.
And not only he was a direct backup to Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk gets hurt, and they sign a guy off the street to just come and play Christian Kirk's spot. What does that tell you? I mean, there's a lot of signals here that are suggesting that he's not going to play as much as everyone wants him to play. But I mean, the other side is kind of interesting, the Bengals side. I actually think, a lot of people will laugh, but I actually think this John Ross injury is kind of a big deal. I know that sounds crazy to think, but Zach Taylor's running this offense that's almost like a copy personnel-wise in the way they use personnel sets as what the Rams did. Now, if you remove John Ross, who was kind of the de facto Brandon Cooks, I mean, he obviously isn't Brandon Cooks, but is in that role, this is one of the slowest set of skill players that we've got in the NFL. I mean, Tyler Boyd in the slot. Auden Tate is essentially a tight end playing wide receiver. Tyler, like, this is a slow unit. So, I mean, now they're going to try to spread teams out with just no speed on the field. I mean, I think this could be a bigger deal than people think it is. Not that John Ross is good, but his actual just presence of being able to run fast in a straight line is something that no one else has in this offense now. I think Auden Tate is interesting. He's at 10 and 6 targets, though, the past 2 weeks. He's 6'6". He runs 40% of his routes in the slot. So when I see that, I'm like, I think about where the Cardinals have struggled, giving up slot production and tight end production. He kind of fits in that mold of someone that could have some success, and he's obviously so cheap. And the target volume's been there. And then, Tyler Boyd, we can keep going to. Everyone's going to talk about the, versus the slot. Since Amendola roasted the Cardinals in week 1, they kind of haven't really been giving it up to slot receivers. If you played Tyler Lockett last week, you caught some of that sting. And the thing about Tyler Boyd, too, is that we started to see his touchdown regression really hit. So last year, he had just 5 end zone targets all year, but scored 7 touchdowns. This year, he has no end zone targets at all on the season. He hasn't scored yet. People keep waiting for touchdowns, but he's not getting targets to score touchdowns off of. Where last year, he was breaking plays that he was scoring touchdowns when he should have been scoring is basically what I'm saying. And now this year we've seen that regression kind of hit. He's just been like this middle of the field kind of, guy that can stack volume, which is great for our cash lines. We can plug him in. But what kind of ceiling are we really going to get, from Tyler Boyd? It's going to be pretty interesting. And I would say we're going to circle Tyler Eifert and the tight end narrative around Arizona so far. Disley made it 4 for 4.
Dude, I'm still playing Eifert. I'm doing it.
He's dirt cheap. The cool thing is he's not playing a lot of snaps, but when he's playing snaps, he's running a pass route on 75% of snaps, and he also leads the team in end zone targets. Coming into this game. So, I mean, there's a reason to go back to the well.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason he's not blocking that much is because he might die if he blocks. But, Daigle, if I look at this team, I know people want to play Auden Tate, and I understand the savings in cash games and tournaments. I don't really get it. But the guys I'm looking at here, it's Joe Mixon, it's Tyler Boyd, and it's Tyler Eifert. And I'm not sure in tournaments a reason we have to go a different route. Daigle, where are you at here with the Bengals?
Oh, I definitely wouldn't play Auden Tate in tournaments, but just the fact he's $3K cheaper than Tyler Boyd across sites, makes it easy for cash games, especially given the target volume. I kind of still am on Andy Dalton, dabbling just a little bit. However, Reeves' explanation does make sense that this offense could just genuinely tank or slow down as a whole without John Ross. But still, I mean, the fact is the Cardinals allowed 31 fantasy points to Stafford in week 1, 33 to Lamar Jackson in week 2, 25 to Kyle Allen in week 3. And then last week, it could have been a lot, but Russ wasn't needed as Chris Carson just bowled over everyone. So this Arizona defense is still just terrible to quarterbacks. But given Cincinnati's concentrated target tree now, I would look to actually Tyler Eifert probably to bank that touchdown equity.
Yeah, to me, it's a really simple game stack. You can play Dalton, Boyd, and Eifert, then run it back with David Johnson, and that's it. And at least then, Reeves, that's where most of the production is going to go on both sides.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like I said, it's just this game is probably one I'm going to stack less. This will probably be the game I feel like I could fade more than come under ownership. Just because, one, I think the Cardinals, I mean, I've just way done chasing that ghost. They've shown their hand the last couple weeks. They're just not an explosive offense. And I don't think that they have the offensive line or boundary wide receivers to become an explosive offense. I think that's genuinely a problem. Their schedule does open up here, and maybe we'll start to see them be able to cash in on that. But we're getting them as another, West Coast team, early start. It's tough, man. It's tough for me to just really keep investing and buying this, this allure of Cliff Kingsbury, who I think is fine. I think that they don't look like he did last year. It's not his fault. It's just you have to have personnel, man. You have to have personnel in the NFL eventually. You can only put so much makeup on this offense.
Logically, though, they're playing the hand they're dealt. The past two defenses have played over the top, cutting them off. And so they're saying, take what we give you. And so they are taking what they give you. The issue is that, like you said, they have no explosiveness, and then it lends itself to 3 yards per attempt. So it's not sexy and it's not going anywhere. And that's why David Johnson has been so awesome the past 2 weeks. It's because they have no choice but to continue dumping the ball off and trying to figure out where they get their production from. And so far, no good.
Yeah, I have no problem playing David Johnson. The other guys, though, I'm going to struggle to play. Let's talk about some of our favorite quarterbacks this week. Obviously, if you want the big-time favorites, Carson Wentz at home against the Jets, Tom Brady on the road against Washington. Daigle, I'll start with you here. Who are some of the quarterbacks that you're really focusing on this week?
We need Sam Darnold to play, if only because, not to go to Sam Darnold, but I would love to use Carson Wentz in this spot. Carson Wentz, without the help of Deshaun Jackson, and maybe he doesn't have Deshaun Jackson again. We're not sure yet. He's probably considered questionable technically at this time. But the Jets have just been so poor. The Jets, who came into the year with one of the worst crop of corners and has since just lost faith in all their players and still don't know what to do. But if Darnold's back and we get Robbie Anderson cashing in on that a team high share of air yards, and we get Jamison Crowder back in, getting the dump offs. And
I like Jameis Crowderson, by the way.
Jameis
Crowderson. That's 100% a Madden name crafted in 2024.
It turns out going from Robbie Anderson to Jamison Crowder is very hard. It's very hard. But at his team high target share with Sam Darnold under center from week 1, we need them to actually be able to answer the Jets. But if they can, then this is still one of the league's best offenses. And Carson Wentz, just 6,100, has been making magic despite the fact that he's lacked Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson together the past 2 weeks. So yeah, now with everyone presumably healthy, if we get a full game stack here, if we get everyone back on the field, I think it's a sneaky game stack.
What about you, Reeves? Because, it's when I look at, that Sam Darnold situation, I'm not sure he's going to play. It kind of seems to me like they're going to play it really cautious. I know he's splitting snaps in practice with Luke Falk, but Reeves, who are some of the other quarterbacks you're looking at?
Yeah, that game would be interesting, even if Darnold doesn't play. And I kind of like Robbie Anderson anyways as a guy to go over ownership on, regardless if he plays or not, Darnold, because you saw a lot. If you look at Robbie Anderson's game log career against Stephon Gilmore, it's just a pit of darkness. And they did nothing in that we last saw him on the field. But he had 4 for 81 with Luke Falk against the Browns on Monday night and hit some long balls in that game. So, I mean, against the Eagles, a much better objective matchup that gives up big plays. And Ronald Darby still probably isn't going to play. I kind of like still going over on Robbie Anderson. I mean, obviously not playing in any cash tournaments, or cash games. But, I mean, it's tournament play. I think that there's still some upside to him. And it's not just going to be a complete flat line like they were against New England. But, I mean, I think that you have to look at just the sites, though. Brady is priced way too low on FanDuel. He's fine on DK, but he's priced way too low on FanDuel. Easy to get in. It's kind of one of those all-hands-on-deck Patriot situations, especially now because they're kind of shifted to an 11-personnel-based team. Washington's 28th in passing points allowed per game. Prior to Daniel Jones not popping, they allowed the QB8 or higher the first 3 weeks. I think it's a game where Brady, they build their lead through Brady in the pass game. And I think all those guys are great buy lows in your season-long leagues, Josh Gordon and Julian Edelman, if people are kind of hesitant to that first month of production, because their wide receiver schedule, especially over the next month, is phenomenal. So, I mean, I would definitely try to go in and grab those guys this week if anyone's still selling in the middle ground and you can still buy 80 cents on the dollar any of those guys. But Brady's way too low on FanDuel. I mean, I don't see any way how you get away from him on FanDuel, man.
All right, so let's talk some running backs now. Between David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, and Dalvin Cook, we have got 3 high-priced guys, Daigle, in amazing spots. And the problem is I want to pay for some of these wide receivers too. How are you choosing between those 3 studs, John?
Let's talk Ezekiel Elliott for a second here, though, because I understand the Packers have just been hemorrhaged for rushing yards. But the fact is that in 3 games that we believe Kellen Moore called, Zeke was an afterthought in the passing game, even for the time he was on the field before blowouts. Yes, he was used more last week against the Saints, but it was almost if they had no choice. And that offense, anyhow, did not look like anything Kellen Moore would have called. It's almost like they seeped back into their old Jason Garrett ways and played the exact format they played against the Saints last year, trying to allow their defense to take over. So I know people have been touting Zeke, but the reason we played Zeke last year was because of his career high, around 7 targets a game, I believe, and career high routes run over 21 per game. And it's just not happening this year. It's plummeted. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because he's a complementary piece in this offense. Obviously, he's a terrific tournament play, but I'm just not as high on him in cash because I don't think they use him in the passing game moving forward as much as everyone else believes they will.
What about you, Reeves? Are you down on Zeke as well?
No, I mean, I'm in there because Mike Pettit has come out and stated like they don't care about stopping the run. Like he's openly said, like just like the Chiefs. Like the Chiefs say, we don't care. We want to focus on being able to stop the pass, and that's what the Packers have done. They've built their defense to stop the pass. They give the lowest percentage of fantasy points to wide receivers. Ironically, the teams that are 2 and 3 are the teams we talked about, the Bengals and Cardinals. If you wonder about stacking wide receivers, they didn't bring that up because they get bludgeoned by so many other positions. And Green Bay has just kind of funneled all their production to saying, beat us with your running backs. And your running backs can just go nuclear. Yeah. Jordan Howard was the RB3 last week. Philip Lindsay was the RB3 the week before. Dalvin Cook was the RB1 the week before that. They just don't care. They're going to have 186 yards for scrimmage for opposing running backs, and they're saying you're not going to beat us through the air. The good news is that the Cowboys look like they're going to get Michael Gallup back. So, I mean, it kind of puts their offense back into focus. And we want, like John talked about, I am okay with Zeke being that, like, part of a functioning offense instead of just being the bell cow in a terrible offense. So if the team's going to score 30 points against the soft run defense, I still feel good about Zeke getting a large part of the pie.
I could be swayed for sure. I think to me, and I probably overthink the situation, but one, their offensive line got pummeled, and now they're going into this game without Tyron Smith, their starting left tackle, who's been amazing and is out. So it's perhaps overthinking it, but still, the passing game usage is what worries me, especially on FanDuel or on DraftKings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it is. It comes down to what site you're building your lineups on. I think on FanDuel, it's really easy to go Zeke, Dalvin Cook, David Johnson as your 3, and then the other way, flip it with Zeke and McCaffrey on DK. So you're getting like the best of the, the excelling at what guys fit which point scheme the best. Although McCaffrey fits every point scheme.
Yeah.
So I mean, but I think that's what it comes down to is just kind of what site. I mean, I'm not really into Zeke as much in DPA for the same reasons. One guy I want to talk about though, because it's early in the week and we want to be a little bit forward thinking in case this happens, because it's early in the week. We don't have the full injury reports. Teams only really practiced one day though, is if just this whole Jalen Samuels situation anyways. Let's just talk about it for a little bit. Because one, Connor didn't practice today. He's dealing with that ankle injury. Maybe, obviously if he doesn't end up playing, everyone's going to play Jalen Samuels. But, you look at what they did on Monday night. And when the Steelers hired Eddie Faulkner, who was Samuel's tight ends and fullbacks coach at NC State, and in college he was used as this jack-of-all-trades player. He played some H-back. He played tight end. He played running back. And then at the combine, he worked out as a tight end. Remember, Yahoo gave him tight end eligibility that rookie year. And then when he obviously everyone was pissed off about that. But
if you had him.
We had been waiting though all year. Like, when are they going to use Jalen Samuels creatively? And the week before against the 49ers, he played 14 snaps and didn't have a touch. Mm-hmm. People were dropping him. It's one of the things. And then Monday night they come out and they put it all on the table. They have this guy playing, in the Wildcat. He's getting, completions on those jet, pop passes. He had 10 carries. He had 8 targets in the passing game. He caught them all. He had 78% of his snaps he had usage on, which is the highest, rate of that he's had all season easily. And then the Ravens have just been absolutely just blasted by backfield. So they opened up the season against the Dolphins and the Cardinals. Kind of 2 free passes, hall passes against running backs. And the last 2 weeks, they allowed 197 total yards and 2 touchdowns to the Chiefs backfield, and then 237 yards and 4 touchdowns to the Browns running backs last week. If they're going to do something creative again with Jalen Samuels, we can't count on it. But it's definitely the matchup is there again. And if Connor ends up being out, I mean, he's going to be an auto play at 5K on FanDuel and 41K on DK. It's just we don't know how sticky like all this weird offense on Monday night will be. In that, so I mean, yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like they have to keep it going. I mean, look, they traded away their first round draft pick. They're not going anywhere with Mason Rudolph, throwing the ball 40 times. Daigle, don't they have to continue to work these running backs?
So if this is the case, Tomlin came out in the press conference today, I'm recording this Wednesday, and he said that the reason they did that was because they had only one reliable tight end in Nick Vannett since Vance McDonald's out. So then what we're left looking for come Sunday really is on Sunday morning, if Vance McDonald is ruled inactive, we can maybe not trust, but we can at least be led to believe that they're going back to that offense. So really now we're just kind of looking at Vance McDonald's injury history and moving forward into Sunday, and then we can make our lineups from there.
Imagine the whole thing coming down to what your offense does, depending on if Vance McDonald is available.
Or if Nick Vannett's available, yeah.
Welcome to the Steelers 2019 season. True. Just incredible. But I agree with you guys. And by the way, if Connor is ruled out eventually, Benny Snell becomes a really interesting tournament play also because they're not going to use Jalen Samuels to touch the ball 25 times. I think Benny Snell would be really interesting. I even think you can play them together. We mentioned Dalvin Cook earlier. He's got a phenomenal match with the Giants. Reeves, I see you shaking your head. I don't see any reason to fade Dalvin this week.
Not really, because when you look at, how Stefanski, in these wins, then they go back to show. So if you look at every game that's happened in the NFL this season and you parse by run rate in the game, the 2 games that pop as the highest in the NFL this year were the 2 Vikings wins. So, I mean, if they're going to win and control the script, as favorites, I mean, I know it's another get right spot for Cousins, but we've had 2 already. He had the Raiders game. He had the Falcons game. I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys about chasing it. I mean, I get it. I know, people are on going back to the well there. It's just tough, man. It's tough to have faith in it. So they're going to run the football a ton. Obviously we're not going to move away from Dalvin Cook. I think down the line, especially on FanDuel, I think, DK, there's not a lot of super values at the bottom. Maybe we'll get Samuels, but on FanDuel, David Montgomery's only 5,700 coming off of a season high 24 touches. He's going across the pond in London. I mean, London, we send you the best games. Bears, Raiders. Bears games right now this season are averaging 27 combined points. Like, what a disaster. Like, here you go, London. And the good thing about that game for us, though, is that's a 1:00 stateside kickoff. Like, no one has to get up at 9 on the East Coast and watch that shit. Like, it's terrible. Like,
wait, okay, hold on. If it was 9 a.m., would you wake up to watch the Bears and Raiders?
I'd have it on while I was working.
You wouldn't like it.
I lived on the West Coast just last year, and I woke up for every Jaguars game at 5 a.m. So
Stop. You did wake up or did you stay up?
No. It was, so for everyone back home, I'm usually like a early riser. I'm a 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. guy.
Oh, you're that guy.
I know I suck.
Whatever.
I suck at life.
Golly. I wake up before 10.
My ultimate call on this game is that in that game in London, if they get on the goal line, and it's going to make us mad because we just talked about Dave Montgomery, is that Matt Nagy is going to run maybe not a Philly type special play, but a Mike Vrabel type special play where he gets Khalil Mack a receiving touchdown.
What a stupid game. Let's talk some more. Go ahead, Daigle.
So, oddly enough, though, Chase Daniels' running back target rate was close to a league high, though, whenever he was under center. So Reeves mentions Montgomery, and that could be the key, but you kind of have to decipher whether it's Montgomery or Tariq Cohen, who's dust as a running back. They're just using him as a wide receiver. Like, Cohen had 8 targets and then 14 targets in Daniels' 2 starts. So it could be a small cheat code, whether you think Montgomery or Cohen get the targets in that backfield.
Yeah, I think Montgomery is sort of a league winner, like waiting to happen. Here in about a month, we're going to be saying, why didn't we trade for him in season-long leagues sooner? I'm a big David Montgomery fan. Let's talk some wide receivers. We already talked to the guys in the Falcons-Houston game. Not a surprise. We love them. Reeves, is this the week that Marquise Brown breaks another one?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's kind of an interesting matchup. So, I mean, the Steelers are really good against wide receivers that play on the right wide receiver side. And Marquise Brown's about 40% of his routes on that side. That's kind of where Joe Hayden plays. But they're terrible against slot receivers, and that's where he runs a little under half of his routes. So it's kind of a little bit pick your poison. So there's definitely opportunity there for him. The troubling thing was his usage sucked last week. I mean, his ADOT was 7 yards last week. We don't want that Marquise Brown.
No.
That's not the Marquise Brown we want. His first 3 weeks, it was 17 yards. That's what we want. We want that guy. And with no Greedy Williams, no Denzel Ward, that was pretty disappointing to see him used that way. Wish the game plan was a little bit better. But yeah, and he's just so cheap. I mean, it's so hard when you look at his target share and then, his air yardage share and everything, and you just see his pricing across both sites, and you're just like, oh my goodness, how do you even get away from this guy? Especially on FanDuel, where he was 5,700 last week, and I know because I played a lot of him, and it was terrible. And he went down to 5,400 this week. So, I mean, he's super cheap. I get it. I understand, like, he's definitely having some exposure going overweight on him. Some middle guys, and I talked about the Patriots guys. Those guys are in a phenomenal spot. Philip Dorsett is still really cheap. He had 9 targets, a ton of air yards last week against a really tough matchup against the Bills. Really soft matchup this go around. I like all the Patriots guys.
Josh Gordon week, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in on the Patriots guys. I think they're going to be afterthoughts, and they're all cheap. Like Gordon and Edelman are floating around those mid wide receiver 2, like high wide receiver 3 pricing. I like Alshon. If Djax doesn't play, he came back to 9 targets in another tough matchup, and he found the end zone. I mean, the Jets are allowing as many receiving yards to wide receivers almost as the Eagles, like just a half yard under. So, I mean, there's definitely potential here, like you said, if we had Darnold. But I think Alshon's going to be fine either way. The Jets benched Trumaine Johnson, the last time we saw them. So, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of looking at some of those guys in the middle and obviously the guys we talked about in the earlier matchups.
What about you, Dale? Who are you looking at wide receiver?
Since Reeves wants some strong cash game options, or for you tournament options as well, I'll just go two deep receivers. And because its injuries are going to play itself out this week, especially at the wide receiver position. And first one would be, and this is way off the board, by the way, but if Jarvis Landry's out, this new instilled 12 personnel from the Browns installs Antonio Callaway on the field every single snap. Literally every single snap, because Rashad Higgins is also battling an ankle injury. The Niners have allowed, I believe, the 11th most points to wide receivers, fantasy points per game. And if this Browns team and offense is as efficient as they were against the Ravens. Now, the Ravens defense has a ton of questions. The Niners pass rush in particular has been very underrated this season. But the Browns offense, if they're still efficient as last week, then it should be no issue for Callaway to return value at stone minimum. And that, of course, is just a deep tournament option. Another one that I'll probably actually look at in cash games if we get the injury, if Kenny Stills is ruled out We recall just last year that Kiki QT played 5 games in and out of the lineup with a hamstring injury all year, but he played 5 games over 60% of snaps with the wild card included. And in those games, he averaged over 10 targets. In the playoff game in particular, the loss to the Colts, he got 14 targets, 11 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. And that's just last year, just like very close, like in January, with the same personnel in place. And I think there's something to, if QT plays, it unlocks DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller even more. QT's average depth of target was 14 yards this season, which is very similar, within 2 yards, to Fuller's and Hopkins, whereas QT's is 8.5 from the line of scrimmage last year. So it sort of allows them to not be mashed with Stills running the same routes. And Deshaun Watson's not a check down guy, but QT he wasn't like a safety blanket. It was more he was getting open, and rather than allowing Deshaun Watson and forcing him to hold on to the ball longer, he saw an open guy underneath. And so we can use that floor in cash games, but also it unlocks Hopkins and Fuller, as we talked about earlier, to be ceiling tournament plays.
All right, before we get out of here, Reeves, give me your favorite game stack real quick.
I mean, it's the one we talked about. It's going to be the most popular. I think underrated probably will be maybe that Ravens-Steelers game.
Yep. Yeah, that was the one that was like, if we were going to talk 4 games, the other one was going to be the Ravens and Steelers, because I can always play Lamar Jackson, and he's never all that popular, so I have no problem there. Daigle, your favorite game stack, is it the Falcons game, or are you looking someplace else?
So every week we have the one that everyone goes to, and then it just busts. It goes busto. And if anyone's going to go busto, it's Bill O'Brien every single week. So I'll be all over it, but I don't think it's my favorite, really. I still want Darnold to play. I like this Eagles-Jets game a whole lot, actually.
All right. Well, cool. Guys, I want to thank you guys for joining us. Daigle, tell them where they can find you.
Roto World, as always, we will be on the Roto World Football Podcast on iTunes. Go subscribe. And then Sunday morning, noon Eastern, NBC Sports, Twitch, YouTube. Join us, all start and sit questions.
Yeah, Reeves, where can the people find you?
Oh, I'm over at Sharp Football Analysis, doing the worksheet. We made part of the worksheet free this week. If you want to check that out, kind of after the first month. And then also still, if you want to go over and use the promo code SHARP25, you can get 25% off any type of subscription you want, whether it be betting, props, fantasy, or all of the above.
Yeah, I'm fine with all the above. I like to fire, man. I have no problem with that. But we got to get off here. We got to make way for the Pro Football Focus guys with Britt Devine coming up next. I want to thank Rich and Daigle for joining me. I want to thank the D-Train for producing, and for the Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch y'all later. Peace.